What's up guys, my name is Liam, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Mchose Ace68 and Jet75. I've already taken a look at the smaller version of the Ace60 on my channel, as it's gained a lot of praise from the community for its solid gaming performance and really good features that it does come available with. So how do these bigger versions stack up, and more importantly, could this possibly be the perfect gaming keyboard for you? Let's check it out. Now before we get started today, I do want to let you know that these were sent out to me. However, everything you're going to be hearing in this video is going to be my own words and my own opinions. Included inside the box, they both pretty much come with the same things. The 68 does actually come with a strap, but they do both come with a USB Type A to USB-C cable, and they also do both come with a switch and keycap puller and 2 additional switches. We'll start out taking a look at the Ace68. Just the general build and aesthetic of this, as you can see just by looking at the case, it's very similar to the build of the Wooting 60HE. Like I showed you, it does come with a strap in the box, and it does have this piece over here that you can attach the strap to. The case that this is featured in is an all plastic case, and coming up here at the very top, they do have the USB-C connectivity over here on the left hand side. But the build on the rear is a little bit different. You do have these rubberized feet up in each one of the corners, and this actually does come with flip out feet. So you do have 2 additional settings for height adjustment, and both of these settings do also have rubberized feet down here on the bottom. But then over here at the front, you do have this lip down here. I also have been really enjoying the layout over here on the Jet75 as well. I do like how they do have the control key over here on the right hand side, the delete key up here in the top right hand side. So just everything about this button layout works perfectly for my preference. Coming up at the top, however, they do have the USB-C connectivity up here in the middle. I would prefer for it to be over here on the left, not really that much of a deal breaker. But then it does also have a similar design over here on the back, where it does have these feet up here in the corner. These feet are a little bit smaller, but it also does have these flip out feet as well. 2 additional settings, exactly like the Ace68. And again, both of these 2 different height settings. They also do have rubberized feet on the bottom to add additional grip to prevent it from sliding around. Still does have a really low height, I feel like, up here in the front, so nothing sticks up too high. The corners on this do feel pretty soft. This also does have an LED indicator over here on the right hand side, but I do feel like they've done a really solid job with the layout on both of these. Like I said, honestly, not really too many complaints. They've been a joy to use. And first off, we'll drop the Jet75 on my scale. Do keep in mind, this is also an all plastic case for the top and bottom piece. Looks like we got it coming in at approximately 1,018 grams. And for the Ace68, looks like we got this one coming in at about 755 grams. I did get the topographic keycaps on both the 68 and on the Jet75. Here is a look of what the front and the back on the 68 looks like. These are shine through keycaps, and the lettering on this version, they are on the bottom portion here, not on the very top. But then here's a look of the keycaps over here on the 75, where the lettering is on the top. Same thing, these are shine through as well. So I'm gonna do my best to break down these switches for you. Starting out, here is the TTC Uranus eSports version of these switches, and then here's a really quick look at these brand new Kel God switches that come inside of the Jet75, or at least it's one of the options that it can come with. So we'll go ahead and start out with the 68 variant, and as you can see right here, I will show you guys a close-up of what the PCB looks like underneath the switches themselves. The 68 variant does have the LED south or bottom facing, and then right here, these orange switches, these are the eSports versions, and these are just the plain ones. So the eSports versions, they are rated a little bit heavier. I do believe that they come in around 35 GF, whereas the originals are rated around 32 GF. So like I said, they're rated a little bit lighter. These both have a bottom out of around 3.4 millimeters, however. And honestly, comparing the differences between both of them, there's not a whole lot of noticeable difference there, in my opinion. These eSports versions, they do feel just slightly a little bit heavier. Again, not that it's really that noticeable, but going back and forth between them, I guess you can slightly tell just a little bit, especially when you're trying to feather it down here in the middle. You do feel just a tad bit more resistance on the eSports versions. The one other thing I kind of found like that I noticed between both of these, I do feel like I noticed just a slight bit more of play on the original ones, whereas the eSports, they just feel like they're a little bit more tight. So if I had to pick which version that I wanted between both of these, You know, honestly, it's kind of hard to say. They're not really that far apart. Maybe go with the eSports versions just because they have a little bit more stability, which is something that I kind of prefer more in a keyboard. But again, either way, both of these switch options are pretty solid. And while we're at it, we'll go ahead and we'll just break down the keyboard here, as I do have this opened up. As you can see, once you do remove the keycaps off of this, you do have the screws down here where this is screwed into the tray itself. Once you undo all these screws and take them out, then the top of this just slides out. For these stabilizers, there is a real solid amount of lube in there. The switches do sit inside of an aluminum switch plate. And right underneath that aluminum switch plate, there is a silicone gasket in between the switch plate, separating it from the PCB. And then here is a close-up shot of the back of the PCB. And then right underneath this, they have an additional piece of silicone, typical where it is pretty thick up here at the top. Then it does get thinner down here towards the bottom portion. And once you do remove that, this does just sit in the bottom of a plastic case. And the material or the plastic of this is actually pretty thick. It doesn't feel like it's that flimsy. Next up, when it comes to the Jet75, I do feel like just in general, this keyboard does have a more premium build and feeling to it. And between all these different switches that I've been talking about, as far as the Uranus eSports versions, and these Kill God switches, going back and forth and doing a sound test between all of them, which I will do here for you shortly, even the feeling of these, I would say that just in general, that these Kill God switches, they probably would be my first choice out of the three, the ones that I do like the most. I really do like the sound signature on them. I feel like they're just a little bit better, and they're rated about 35 GF as well, so I haven't noticed any issues with them where they feel too sticky or scratch or anything like that. Pretty smooth actuation for the most part, and even the stem wobble on them honestly feels really solid as I've been using them. As you can see, you get like hardly any type of play at all there, so these switches have been working out for me pretty well. And here's a close-up of the PCB underneath the switch itself. This one does have a top LED. Coming back over here on the stabilizers on this version, same thing as the 60. I do believe they're the same stabilizers. I do notice a nice amount of lube in there, but this one actually does come with these silicone sound dampening gaskets right here underneath the space bar. So when it comes to opening up the Jet75, honestly, this thing was a major pain to open up. I had to get like a bunch of pry tools and pry the front and all around the edges to separate the top from the bottom. So as you can see, there is no screws here for the design. So once you actually do get the top shell removed, or the top of the case, excuse me, removed from the bottom, as you can see, there's all these clips in around here on the sides and everything that do clip this together. And once you open this up, you can see that this actually does come gasket mounted. So once you pop off the top, you should just be able to pull this out. Now there actually is a cable underneath that is plugged to the circuit board, to the USB-C port up here in the front middle, but I'll just kind of lift this up and show you what I'm talking about. These are the silicone gaskets on these aluminum edges. They're attached to the switch plate. In the middle here, same thing as where you do have a silicone gasket separating the switch plate from the PCB. And here I'll do a quick close-up shot for you of what the back of that PCB looks like. But aside from that, the rest of the build is similar to the 68 in regards to the fact that you do have just a thick piece of silicone, the silicone gasket, down here in the bottom of the plastic tray. So now I'll go ahead and drop a sound test with all three of these keyboards. The settings for all three of these keyboards are accessible through this web driver all you need to do is click right here to make sure it is paired, and then you can open it up. Just to let you know, when I first opened this up, the language was already automatically set to Chinese. I believe this is Chinese anyways, and just come down here in the bottom left-hand corner if that does happen to you, where you can select your language. But the software amongst all three of these keyboards, again, it's going to be using the same thing, like I said, so it's going to be the same layout. There'll be some minor differences with the sensitivity settings and depending on the type of switch you have, but I'll get that here in just a second. So the first tab, as you can clearly see here, you do have these light settings. Here's these presets. You can also adjust the speed and brightness of the presets. For this next tab, this is the most important tab, the trigger settings, excuse me. What you want to do is come in here. Sometimes I've been having issues with this global key settings tab. I don't know why, so I've been kind of coming over here, doing the individual keys and coming up here to press the select all keys. Of course, you can come in here and individually edit each key separately if you wish to do so. I usually do different settings, but every time I test keyboards out, I just put all the keys to the maximum setting just to try and test this out and push it as far as I can. So a couple things to note here is every time I get a keyboard, I say this in my previous videos, I'll repeat myself here. Every time you get a new keyboard or you do an update, I always recommend coming in here and doing a calibration. What you want to do is make sure you have the correct switch selected that you have installed in your keyboard, and then complete the calibration process. The one thing with this keyboard is recently, with all these firmware updates it's been going through, I have been having some instability issues if I do adjust this to the highest setting. As you can see right here, I currently have it to 0.16. This is where it's kind of been the threshold where I haven't really been noticing as many issues, but sometimes if I just leave it at 0.1, the keyboard will work fine for me most of the time, but every once in a while, I don't know what's going on. It'll just randomly select a key, and that can be kind of annoying for me. So again, I just been kind of slowly adjusting it, and so far I haven't had too many issues right here. And just to be clear, when I do talk about these issues with these keyboards, not really a major deal breaker. This still feels really sensitive, and honestly, you're probably not, most people aren't going to really even notice that much of a difference. But this will vary depending on what switches you have in here. These Kel God switches do have a maximum actuation of 3.4 millimeters. Coming up next over here to the trigger sensitivity. This is another thing that can be different between these keyboards. For this one, it does allow you to go as low as 0.01 millimeters on the sensitivity. I believe that the 60 and the 68, the lowest it goes is a 0.02. But as you can see right here, they put a recommendation of to set the values no less than 0.04 millimeters. As you're using this, in case there are any instabilities. Since I have been noticing some issues like I just previously mentioned, I just been setting this at 0.05. Again, this is still incredibly sensitive, but in order to enable these settings, you do have to make sure this option is selected. And then down here, you can individually adjust the press and the release for the trigger if you select that. And here's the continuous rapid trigger. As I mentioned on previous videos, I don't remember if I tested this continuous rapid trigger on the 60. I just been leaving this off on all the keyboards I've been testing, because I found with a lot of them I used, it can cause some additional instabilities when you're already messing with these really high sensitivity settings. Then finally, the tab over here for the dead zone settings. I've also been messing around with this. I just have it off right now, but again, this is something you can do to further increase the stability of your keyboard, to make sure you're not getting any accidental presses or releases. If you do want to come over here and fine tune and mess with those settings. Next up, you just got basic stuff like key remapping, advanced keys. Again, for the price of these keyboards, really impressive. It comes with Rappy Snappy SOCD, even though this is becoming more common on keyboards now. This is super easy to set up. As you can see, I do have SOCD on my A&D. Depending on the type of game that you play, if you use this on some games like CS2, then you do risk getting banned, so I don't recommend doing it. But to set it up, it's just this simple. Come over here, I set this as low as possible right there for the sensitivity to get the quickest actuation. And that's what we're looking at for that. Finally, over here on the performance tab, this is where you can adjust the polling rate settings. Here's the berserk mode. I've also been testing it without it just to see if it impacted the stability. And for my keyboard with my configuration, it has not. And then they also have things over here like the stability mode. I've also been playing around with this and this dynamic calibration. Even when I've left the stability mode on, I've still been having the really small issues I mentioned earlier, just to let you know. And then over here at the other settings, always make sure that you're coming in here and keeping your firmware up to date. Another thing I wanted to bring up to you guys is if you set up your keyboard and you're still having issues, I found a lot of times these issues can be fixed if you do a factory reset. So if you do notice anything, or you just want to do a factory reset just to make sure, the double check that your keyboard will be running as good as possible. Again, doing a factory reset, even after doing the update and the calibration, this can come in here and still fix some issues down the line if you do come across any on your system. As for the performance on these keyboards, like I told you, I've already reviewed the Ace60, and when I originally compared this to the Wooting 68G, it was in the earlier firmware version, and on top of that, I did kind of conclude that there wasn't really a whole noticeable difference just in real world experience on the press latency. The release latency, however, was coming out just slightly a little bit ahead. I always test them 10 times on the press and 10 times on the release. The Wooting actually won 6 out of the 10 times for the press. Since they have been upgrading the firmware on this constantly, I feel like I get firmware updates for it all the time. One thing I have kind of noticed recently, as I mentioned in the software version, is I have been kind of noticing some inconsistencies when you are using this at the absolute highest sensitivity. And with that being said, I feel like they've been making some adjustments, and it has kind of impacted the press latency. Now, just to be completely clear, with the press latency, still the latency on both these keyboards is still working really well. I don't necessarily think it's going to be something that you're going to notice so much in a real world experience. And I have found that now the Wooting is coming ahead a lot more consistently, or coming out on top when it comes to the press latency. However, this doesn't seem to have impacted the release latency, where that still does feel really solid coming across on these keyboards. All right, guys, so that about wraps things up on these Mchose keyboards. Like I mentioned in my previous Ace60 video, the price point that these do come in at, the feeling of them, I mean, just the web-based driver alone actually is really impressive, and gaming on these has honestly been a joy for me, so I've been really enjoying them a lot. They do still have a couple of issues to work out here. Like I told you, when you're playing with these at a really high sensitivity, the fact that it will just randomly hit keys on you from time to time, and even though I don't really feel like a lot of people out there are going to be playing at the highest sensitivity, some people usually only do it for their WASD, and it's been working out fine for me for the most part, as long as I've been, again, keeping the sensitivity on most of these keys just a little bit higher. And though the versions that I have sitting here in front of me are spec'd out and priced a little bit higher, you can still pick these up at a cheaper price if you were to put different switches or even at different keycaps on here. And the performance of these, based on all the features this comes with that you can adjust in the web-based driver, I still really like these a lot, and I feel like they're a really solid performer. But even for these higher spec versions, I do feel like they're priced very fairly for the performance and the value that I've been getting out of them. They have been a joy for me to game on. So if you feel like I've left anything out, please let me know in the comments down below. If you've enjoyed watching this video and are interested in seeing more videos like this in the future, please drop this video a like and subscribe to my channel. And thank you guys so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.